not have middle gate, but they were here, they were almost never used. But it was a light traffic there, you want to get a boat pretty quicker, you put them up in that first chamber, shut those middle gates, and just fill that one chamber into it. But those gates were almost never used, so there's such heavy traffic there, they were using both of them together.
Come get a drink. Drink. You like the donkey? It's polluted.
Need some of the property, she rented out to people, but the people who lived in this property, they did not pay to live here. She wanted a place that people could go to who had no resources, so the people who lived here, they were more mobile than the ones who lived in the John Brown home, so they worked on the farm, and that's how they took care of their room and board. But she turned it over to the church in 1903. The church officially opened it in 1908, and at that point they did start charging a registration fee here because they made her understand that it was going to be an ongoing facility. There had to be some kind of finances coming in. She almost took her property back from the church because she didn't want that, but they were able to work it out, and they were able to come to good terms on it. This house was called the Harriet Tubman Home for the Aged. It's the only one out of the 9 that were here. And they say that anywhere from 6 to 14 people may have lived in this house at any one point. There were 4 small bedrooms like this one upstairs across the back of the house. There were 2 large rooms like this over top of us, which we believe were turned into sleeping quarters. Because back then, people did not need as much stuff to live on as we think we need to live on today. It was used that way until the early 30s. In the early 30s, the AME Zion Church closed this facility down. At that point, they would not bring any more patients or residents, and because they closed it down in the 30s, it has been said that neighbors who lived in this community after it had been closed down, they came on the property with no one here to stop them. They became thieves. And they stripped all the buildings, took all the wood and clapped it off those other 8 buildings, along with this building. Those other 8 buildings collapsed. This is the only one that we were able to save. They say people did that in the 30s because in the 30s, people were still coming out of the Depression. Wood was of a premium. And with no one here to stop them, they became thieves. Took what they wanted from somebody else's property to repair their homes. Not like it should have been done, but that's how it was done. This here, and I'll leave it on this chair if you want to see it, but this here is a picture, I'll do this. This here is a picture of the way this house looked in the early 40s. After it had been stripped, I'll come back to it. After it had been stripped by people in the 30s. I'll leave it up here in this chair if you want to take pictures. As I say, my light blew out, so I really hope you can see it. If not, it'll be in the chair. Okay? The house was restored in 1952. We've had tours going on here since 1953. You may remember when I started my talk that one of the things I said, that a house without a story is just a building. I didn't say that to this group, did I? I knew it was something I forgot. Yeah, but normally I tell you that a house without a story is just a building. So we don't fixate on her furniture or the buildings because her life is more important than that. The furniture in this bedroom is said to have been used by Harriet Tubman. It was given back to us by her brother and his family. William Henry Stewart and his family gave us his furniture back because they said that when Harriet Tubman would visit her brother, on occasion she would spend the night. And on those times when she did spend the night, this was the furniture in the bedroom where she stayed and also the bed on which she slept. They gave it back to us as a memorial to her life, along with the sewing machine that you'll see in the other room. There's a Bible on the stand in there. That Bible has the date of 1896 in it, which was the same year she purchased this 25 acres at the land auction. Other than that, there are no other markings in that Bible, because as you may or may not know, Harriet Tubman did not read or write. They say she had such a brilliant mind that when people read things to her or tell her things, she was able to memorize most things and use it to her advantage. Her relatives had a reunion here a few years ago, and while they were here, some of them approached me and they said, "Hey, Rev, we believe Harriet Tubman could read and write. She just didn't tell anybody." So now there's this whole new story. But we determined she couldn't read or write because if you lived on the planet for 90 plus years, someone should have found something that you had written, if no more than a recipe. We did find some receipts for coal that she had delivered to her house over there, and on the bottom of those coal receipts, the only signature on it was an X. I was doing some restoration work over there one year, and I found a little brass plaque about the size of a credit card. Her name was punched out in it. It said Harriet Tubman Davis. We believe that she used that card as a calling card, or that plaque as a calling card. She could set it out on documents and trace through the stenciling of it. We know that Harriet Tubman and Harriet's brothers, when they escaped, they all changed their last name from Ross to Stewart. They took on the name of a man that they had worked for at a lumber company there, made it that much harder for them to be captured by changing the name. The clock here was given to us by her nephew, Clarence Stewart. The sewing machine that you see over here was given to us by the same family who gave us the bedroom furniture, William Stewart and his family, given to us by his great-great-grandniece, Judith and Gladys Bryant. The bowl in the middle of the table was given to us by her great-great-grandniece, Pauline Coates Johnson. She just died about 6 months ago, give or take a few, but she wanted us to have that as a memorial to her life. The china, we don't talk about it a lot.
Why?
Because it's my china.
Oh.
I did tell you my wife used to work here with me. She wanted to give the house a lived-in look, so she brought china from home to give the house a lived-in look. I'm eating on paper plates now. Just kidding. But she liked this pattern. It's called the New Princess Collection, and she always felt like Harriet should be her own little princess. It's made by a company called the Moge. Anybody who knows anything about that stuff. You may remember me telling you that Harriet Tubman went back to get her sister Rachel in 1860. Well, we believe that was the last time she returned to the Maryland area. And upon finding out that her sister Rachel had died, she brought one of her brother's daughters to this area, a young girl named Margaret. And for many years, people assumed that Margaret was Harriet's biological daughter. But relatives told me that Margaret was a niece of Harriet Tubman, and so when she brought Margaret to this area to keep her safe and protected, she turned Margaret over to Lizette Warden. Lizette was the sister of Francis Seward, the wife of William Seward. So we believe that Margaret was then raised in the Seward home. That way she could be educated and move forward with her life. That is true, but she was a niece, not a daughter, like most people try to make out. This is Margaret here. Margaret at some point married Henry Lucas. Henry Lucas was a cook in this area, and they had a daughter named Alice. Harriet Tubman's relatives continue just like ours. She has relatives that still live here locally, as well as across the country and around the world. Some of them know their relationship to her, some of them don't.
Right away. The house was actually built by a man named Judge Elijah Miller, and he was from Bedford down in Westchester County. He's a very wealthy land speculator. He attended college at what is now Williams College in Williamstown, Massachusetts, and he comes this way because his father had served in the Revolutionary War, and they often paid soldiers with land grants. So Judge Miller had inherited thousands of acres here in the Finger Lakes, and he comes this way to oversee his holdings, but he is also an attorney and a judge. When he builds the house in 1816, he's a widower, and he has two young daughters. He has a daughter, Lizette, and a daughter, Frances Adeline Miller. And we had school tours all morning, and when you explain to young women that in the 19th century, they're not going to be educated like young men are, and we go through the list of what you can and cannot do, it really is eye-opening. Judge Miller is way ahead of his time. He sends his daughter Lizette and his daughter Frances Adeline Miller to the Emma Willard School in Troy, New York. And Emma Willard was a pioneering educator of women in the 19th century. So at the Emma Willard School, Frances and her sister are learning mathematics and science and languages, things that young women are not normally taught. And our Seward story starts right there. Frances at the Emma Willard School has a best friend whose name is Cornelia Seward. And one school vacation, Cornelia asks her friend Frances to come home with her for the school prank. And Frances goes, of course that would be lovely. And they head off down to, which I had never heard of, and I'm from Central New York, Florida, New York, which is down in Orange County. It is about 90 miles northwest of New York City. So they arrive at the Seward home in Florida, New York, and lo and behold, Cornelia Seward's older brother is home from his job as an attorney in New York City. And he's 4 years older than Frances. He's single, and I always say, what a catch this man is. He is tested into Union College in Schenectady at age 15. He graduates in 1820. He is elected to Phi Beta Kappa. He is first in his class, and he is the speaker at his own graduation. And I was working as an attorney in New York City. He meets Frances, develops a fondness for her. I always call him a man with a plan. He decides that he should come to Auburn, New York, and get a job with Judge Miller, which he does. Seward arrives here in 1823, works with Judge Miller, and in 1824, he marries Frances Adeline Miller here in Auburn, up at the Episcopal Church on Genesee Street. That's when Seward moves into this house. And it's interesting, Judge Miller, in giving his daughter's hand in marriage, insists that they live with him in this house for the rest of his life, which turns out to be 27 years. And at that time, it's a 10-room federal townhouse. We have a wonderful silhouette from 1833. This is the family living in the 10-room house with the servants. From left to right is Paulina Titus Miller. That's Judge Miller's mother. The 6'4", 240-pound Judge Miller. His sister, Clorinda. William Henry Seward, we joke that it looks like he's checking his iPhone. Oh, Abraham Lincoln again. The two oldest Seward children, to the left is Augustus, who was known as Gus, and next to him is his brother, Frederick. And as I say, we had fourth graders here this morning, and young boys are horrified that they would be in a dress until they're 5 or 6 years old in the 19th century. And then finally, Frances Adeline Miller Seward. They cover a period of 300 years. Our oldest book is the collected works of John Milton from 1698.
Wow,
and you'll see that, you can see that it's on display just before you go back into the where you entered. You'll find Mrs. Seward here a lot. This was the heart of the home before the additions. You'll find her here in the evening. We call this her laptop. And she is very much involved in abolition and women's rights. And she is a great counselor to her husband. She edits his speeches. He is anti-slavery, but she is just, fervently abolitionist. And my favorite letter that she writes, which I have to paraphrase, it's during the Missouri Compromise. And Seward was known by his middle name to family and friends, so he was known as Henry. So her letter starts, "Dear Henry," and it goes on to say, "I know you're a politician. I know that you have to compromise. It takes a long time to get everything done, but there are some 4 million souls suffering under this system. In other words, get it done." So she's very much a counselor to him. And she's busy with her friends. Her best friend in town here is a woman whose name was Martha Coffin Wright. And she was Lucretia Mott's sister. And to give you an idea of this woman, her biography is entitled "A Very Dangerous Woman." Because all of the gentlemen along Genesee Street, she was very suspect because she thought women should have the same rights as men. And she was one of the organizers of the 1848 Seneca Falls Convention. So she was always keeping Frances up to date on what's happening. During the convention, Frances here is working on the 1848 Married Women's Property Act. And women have very few rights at the time, and when you get married, you have fewer. You get married, you can't sign a contract, you can't inherit, obviously you can't vote. My grandmother couldn't vote until she was 30 years old. If you have a piece of expensive jewelry that your grandmother left you, your husband can sell it and keep the money. Divorce is very rare because you can't support yourself. Women don't have careers, and we do know that Frances's sister Lizette was in a very verbally abusive marriage here in Auburn. We know from letters between Lizette and Frances that it was not a happy marriage. The Sewards will have 5 children. They have Gus and they have Fred in the silhouette. They have a 5-month-old daughter, Cornelia, who dies of smallpox at 5 months old. They save Will Jr. for the youngest son, and this is their youngest child and only surviving daughter is Fanny. And she is everyone's favorite Seward child. This is an 1858 Matthew Brady photograph, and it is of William Seward and his daughter Fanny. We know that Lincoln and Judge Miller were both 6'4". William Seward was my size. He was about an inch taller than me. And from this bust, he had bright red hair, bushy eyebrows, blue eyes, and he had quite a large nose. A friend of his and others likened him to a wise macaw. so quite the nose, but interesting character. You'll usually see him seated in photographs or paintings. Fanny, his daughter, was taller than he was. Fanny wants to grow up to be a most modern woman. She wants to be a writer. She starts keeping a diary at age 14. And the Sewards, again, so forward thinking. How will she support herself if she doesn't marry? Well, we'll fix that. We'll set up a trust fund for Fanny so that she can always support herself as a writer. And then, tragedy of the Victorian era. Fanny dies just before her 22nd birthday. She has a consumption, which we know is tuberculosis. She visits her father in Washington, gets typhoid, and she dies there. And he is just inconsolable. Frances Seward, his wife, dies in 1865. Fanny dies in 66. And he takes all of Fanny's books and he makes this memorial library to her. And this is considered to be the finest intact library of a wealthy 19th century young woman. They're the best bound books of all their Shakespeare, romances, adventures, and there is a copy of Uncle Tom's Cabin that's signed to Fanny by the author in there. So, just a tragedy. After his wife died, Seward thought that he and Fanny, because she wasn't going to get married, that they would travel the world, and so he was devastated at her death. With lots of was Will Jr., who's pictured there, and his wife Janet Watson Seward, who was from here in Auburn. She was known as Jenny. And it will be their son, Will the third, we call him, William Henry Seward III, who will grow up to leave the house to the Emerson Foundation in 1951. So very quickly, the family all grown up. This is Gus, the oldest son as an adult. He looks like Ulysses Grant. He's the oldest, much to his Quaker background mother. He went to West Point. She was just horrified that he would go to West Point. And she keeps writing to him that he should withdraw his appointment. And no, mother, I'm not going to do that. He's the child we know the least about. He never married. He was career Army. He spent the Civil War as a Union paymaster in Washington, D.C. He never saw combat. And after the war, he did surveying out west for the Department of Army. So he's sort of the son we know the least about. Frederick Seward, the middle son, who is the little boy in the silhouette, is just a carbon copy of his dad. He goes to Union College in Schenectady. He's elected to Phi Beta Kappa. He is his father's assistant secretary of state. His wife, Anna, will become Seward's official Washington hostess, and we'll meet her in the next room. Frederick Seward and his wife, Anna, never had any children. They retired to their home called Montrose, down on the Hudson River. And at their deaths, it was Will Jr. who brought their effects back here to South Street. The middle portrait, the large one, is a posthumous portrait of the doomed Mammy Seward. And it was arrive at the Seward's Washington residence, 10 o'clock at night. David Harold stays outside with the horses. Lewis Powell is dressed in a large trench coat and a hat similar to that, not that hat, but similar to that. And he has an apothecary's box, and he pretends he has medicine from Dr. Verity, Secretary Seward's doctor. And he talks his way past the housekeeper, and he starts up the stairs in the house. He's trying to figure out where Seward is in the house. But Frederick Seward is coming down the stairs, and he confronts Powell. Wait a minute, 10 o'clock at night, you can't see my father. Give me the medicine, I'll give it to him or come back in the morning. And Powell goes, okay, and he turns and starts down the stairs, and Frederick Seward starts up the stairs, but then Powell whips around, and in one hand he has a Bowie knife, a picture right there, with a 10-inch blade, and in the other hand he has a 36 caliber Colt Navy revolver. And he puts the revolver up to Frederick Seward's head, pulls the trigger, and the gun misfires. So he turns the gun around and just bashes Frederick Seward over the head, fractures his skull in 3 places. So now Fred is bloody and unconscious on the stairs. Fanny's intervening to her father. She doesn't know what the commotion is. She opens the door and she's face to face with Lewis Powell. And now he knows where Seward is. Pushes Fanny aside. An Army nurse, George Robinson, is in with Seward. He gets stabbed with that knife. Gus is in another bedroom. He comes running. He gets stabbed. And Powell is able to get to Seward. And you can see the diagram of the slashes to Seward's face. And Powell thinks he's killed him. Seward rolls off the bed, and Powell runs out of the room, runs down the stairs, out into Lafayette Park, and David Harold and the horses are gone. He escapes with Booth to Maryland and Virginia, where Booth will be killed, and David Harold will be captured. Lewis Powell can't get out of Washington. He hides out in the city over the weekend, and on Monday night he goes back to Mrs. Surratt's boarding house, pretends he's a day laborer. He has a pickaxe. He pretends he doesn't know Mrs. Surratt. Mrs. Surratt pretends she doesn't know him, and there are Union soldiers there, become suspicious, and they're both arrested then. The Seward saved everything. This is part of the sheet that covered William Seward that night. Their little rust-colored drops are actually Seward's blood. And in the other case here, in the oval frame, are flowers from Lincoln's casket that were made into a remembrance for the Seward family. They couldn't attend the funeral. The co-conspirators are sent to a military tribunal, and they are dealt with quickly and fiercely. They're sentenced to be executed, and the 4 that are executed in July are Mrs. Surratt, George Surratt, Lewis Powell, and David Harold. The little red scrap is wallpaper from the President's box at Ford's Theater. And this is just Will's sidearm. These are his. This is not the gun that was used in the attack.
as a fundraiser for the Historical Society. And I'm pretty sure anybody who bought a ticket knew if they won, they were giving it back. Because most people don't have a room big enough to put this in and just let it be. And besides, I don't think, I wouldn't let a kid younger than 14 touch it. I don't think there's too many little things in here that are unbreakable. Anyway, it worked as a fundraiser, and it's lovely to have it sitting here. We did mess up one thing. This is where we are, right here, but it got set up as a bedroom. There's some of the toys are down on the other end, but who's quibbling? This particular stained glass is not the Beckers at all. This is Irene and her sister, whose name I just can't think of right now, Hogue. When they were growing up, their mansion was just the other side of the Presbyterian church here on Cady.